Hey, everybody. Welcome to the FTN Network Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. I am Aaron Schatz of FTN Network. You find me at ftnfantasy.com/DVOA. He is Mike Tanier of themessenger.com, and you find him at themessenger.com/sports. And this is our podcast for December 4th, 2023, discussing Week 13 in the NFL. Before we get started, I just want to point out what I was going to say to Mike before we came on the air, which is yesterday I put out a list of the 5 best receivers over a certain minimum number of targets in receiving DVOA ever.
Okay.
And someone just responded and was like, that's not a very impressive list of names. Maybe the metric needs to be changed.
Okay.
Maybe you need to learn who Wes Chandler was. Maybe you need to learn who John Taylor was.
Don't you know that anything that happened before 2016 isn't real? Never happened. But my favorite version of this, by the way, is when we're talking about every time I mention Belichick, like clockwork, someone comes into my mentions and it's like, he's the most overrated coach of all time. He's actually a below average coach.
Right.
And the 1996 Browns suddenly have to do a lot of heavy lifting here. And I look at this, it's like, you don't
remember what 1996 is like. You don't remember what it was like when that team decided that they were pulling up and moving, and Belichick had to still it's the 95 Browns, right? 96 is the first year in Baltimore. So 95 is the Belichick year you're talking about? I mean, come on. Oh, man.
And Bernie Kosar and Vinny Testaverde, and you're trying to like manufacture, and the team is in complete shambles at that point. Yeah, you do a lot of heavy lifting there. So, yeah, I'm sorry, folks. Wes Chandler was a hell of a player for one of the historic offenses in NFL history.
And John Taylor.
Yes, one of the South Jersey's own John Taylor.
Right.
For historic NFL offense, one that literally we still talk about.
And then the other guys on the list were Jordy Nelson in 2011, was awesome. Yes. Tyler Lockett, who's a great guy who just doesn't have the samples. He just doesn't catch enough passes to be like the top in total value, but value per play, he's had an amazing season.
Right.
And then Steve Watson in 1981, who, if you go back and look at what Steve Watson did in 1981, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. There's also this thing called like era adjustment.
Yes.
Because 80s football and 90s football, even
are very different.
Is not 2023 football where there's like 11 jet sweeps and slot screens per game.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about 2023 football. So let's talk about this weekend's games, and let's talk about the 49ers crushing the Eagles. The 49ers have now crushed the Eagles and the Cowboys. They had 78% DVOA in this game. It is their 6th game this season, over 50%, including 4 straight.
Okay.
No other team this year has more than 4 such games. Buffalo has 4. Baltimore has, because they're Buffalo and they're inconsistent.
Right.
Baltimore has 3.
Mm-hmm.
No other team has more than 2. San Francisco has 6.
Good heavens. And you posted earlier the best teams in DVOA history through, I guess, week 13 or whatever. And it was even a grouch could not say that this was a bad list of teams. It was the 2007
Patriots and the 95 Cowboys and the 1998 Broncos and the Redskins from 91. And yes, San Francisco is now 8th on that list.
Right. A list of teams that either win the Super Bowl or historically, oh my God, what happened to them in the 4th quarter of the Super Bowl team.
All right. Or lost really close, like the 2018 Chiefs lost really close.
Right. In a playoff game, like a shootout.
Yeah.
Right.
So we should talk a little bit about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is leading the league in every stat.
Yes.
He did not attempt a single deep pass against the Eagles.
But that's out of character.
Yeah. The funny thing is that for the rest of the year, Purdy actually has been very good on deep passes. It's just this game that they didn't pass deep, and I don't know if that has to do with the way the Eagles were playing their safeties or something. Mm-hmm. But where do you come down on the Brock Purdy MVP discussion?
Well, first of all, I'm tired of all MVP discussions. I'm done. I'm done.
Well, it's a tough year because I feel like we've had a different favorite every week. So we have to keep having these discussions over and over and over again.
Same conversation over and over again. And, I think it made sense, and it makes sense to have a level of Purdy skepticism And it made sense to like reserve judgment, particularly for the Eagles game, and see how things go. But we're now reaching the point where if you say, I don't care what happens, Brock Purdy is not the MVP of this league. If that's where you're at in all of this, I think that there's some confirmation bias of your priors there. If he gets an everything exclusion because the weapons around him are so good, I don't think that's valid.
So the question is, see, my position, and I've said this a few times this year, has been that he is absolutely a VP.
Okay.
But I'm not sure he's MVP. He's a valuable player, right? Like the discussion is not, is Brock Purdy a completely replaceable part, or is he the most valuable player in the league?
Right.
He's a valuable player. And at this point, I can't imagine not putting him on my list of 5 guys.
Right.
I'm still having a real problem with the idea that he should be first, despite how good his stats are, because Jimmy Garoppolo was not as good last year, but was number 1 in passing DVOA last year. Jimmy Garoppolo, right at like 33% or something. And Purdy is now at like 49%. So, I mean, has Purdy been better than Garoppolo last year? Yeah.
Right.
But again, then the question is like Purdy compared to last year's Garoppolo versus Dak Prescott compared to what Cooper Rush would do, or Patrick Mahomes compared to what the Kansas City's backup would do, or something.
Right. Now, Dak would probably be my favorite right now, but you know what it is? It's December 4th.
There's still a month to go.
And we've seen the Cowboys do some things in December, and we've seen Dak do some things in December, so there's an issue there. Lamar Jackson would also be high on my list, and I'm not negating Jalen Hurts in a game where, you know, everything went wrong defensively and everything like that, and suddenly Jalen Hurts is out of the conversation. But like Brock Purdy versus, say, CJ Stroud.
Yeah. If those were the only 2 candidates, who would you vote for?
I would vote for Purdy.
Interesting.
Right. And I am inclined to possibly vote for Hill or Tyreek or McCaffrey along the way, but I recognize that when my vote gets dwarfed out, so then I have to turn around and say, well, as an analyst, who do I think is going to win? But Mahomes is an interesting one right now because it's just a Mahomes season. And we have to do, and you look at that game last night. It's hard to argue for Mahomes to win MVP in that game last night when you throw that interception late in the game, when the team does not score a lot of points, where you have to do all of this heavy lifting in terms of, wow, this receiver's not good and that receiver's not good. Yeah. All true, but we're not talking about who's going to be better in 2024, 2025, 26. We're talking about this year and the accomplishments.
Yeah, this year I don't think Mahomes is the MVP, despite the fact that you do give him an adjustment for all the drop passes. Casey has a couple of Dallas questions we'll get to in a second. Oh. I just want to get your sort of general feeling about the Eagles. I mean, obviously, this was a confirm your priors game for anybody who does advanced analytics, not to mention the Vegas odds makers. There was a reason they made the 49ers favorites on the road. There's a reason that every advanced analytic, not just DVOA, had San Francisco ahead of Philadelphia going into this game. But what's your feeling about Philadelphia coming out of this game? In particular, what I thought was interesting was that they couldn't run on the 49ers, who have a very average run defense.
They couldn't run on the 49ers. They were running Gainwell more than Swift, which was weird. That's much talked about around here. They had the opportunity, because this game was close all through the first half, to run the ball, and they were ineffective, and I think they got away from it a little bit. There's, here in Philly, fans have been braced for that loss for a month because we're braced for it for the Cowboys and the Chiefs and the Bills and all these other close games. And, it does demonstrate here that, the Eagles are not the best team in the conference. Yeah. They're not. And you're going to keep like banging your head against that as you analyze the Eagles and say, well, we knew the pass defense, particularly over the middle, was trouble, and this is a bad matchup for the Eagles. It is a bad matchup for the Eagles that they will probably have to conquer on the way to the Super Bowl, and they have to figure this out.
Matthew Carley wants to know if DVOA has seen an uptick for the San Francisco defense since they added Chase Young and benched Isaiah Oliver. And I don't have the exact number in front of me, but yes.
Okay.
They're now 5th in defense. And they were a couple weeks ago, they were something like 15th in defense. And now they're 5th. So there's no question. There's absolutely, the San Francisco defense has been better in the last 2 or 3 games since they added Chase Young. No question.
Right. Worth pointing out, they're one of the healthiest teams in the NFL, and that's not a knock on them, but they're
no, but it's a helper.
Yeah, it's a helper. That's why when I was talking about the Broncos last week, and the Broncos had a tough loss, was like, well, why are they in the conversation and not here? Well, they're mostly healthy. The 49ers with all these stars, like even Eric Armstead, oh, he's playing. Oh, I thought he was on the injured list.
Yeah.
They have just about everybody they would possibly need right now.
Casey says, Mike, in your column today, you posit that a mercurial team like Dallas would have an identity crisis if they suffered a loss like Philly. In fact, didn't Dallas suffer a similar loss and bounce back? I mean, they did get crushed by the 49ers back in, what was that, week 4, week 5? Yes. Week 5, I think.
Yeah. No, what I meant was, I mean, maybe I didn't write it clearly because it was late at night, that the Cowboys, after a victory like this, might take a week or two off. And we've seen the Cowboys ride unbelievably high and then trip, generationally. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, the Cowboys bouncing back from a loss, they have a loss, and they lose to the Cardinals, they do bounce back, etc. You look at some of these teams, and if they come in and they say, this is our Super Bowl, we won, we solved all this, you can almost set your clock by them saying, oh, here comes a flat game or two afterwards. I don't think the 49ers are that team. I think history has told us the Cowboys can be that team.
Yeah. The Super Bowl odds that we have love the 49ers and Ravens at this point, so far past everyone else. It makes me wonder, I need to do some research on Super Bowl odds and improve our odds formulas. I wonder if the best teams need to be blunted a little bit because we have the 49ers like far past the market at this point. Wow. I think they win in like 36% of simulations or something.
My favorite part of this is, and you mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, Christmas night, 49ers Ravens.
Ravens going to be so good.
And it's probably not going to matter at all.
Yeah, because it won't matter for tiebreakers. No, it may. I mean, it may. The AFC number 1 seed race is so close that may matter for the Ravens more than it does for the 49ers.
Right, and that's also coming in. The Eagles have those easy games at the end. I think they have the Giants twice and the Panthers.
Yes.
So the 49ers, who are still a game behind the Eagles, can't like trip up late in the year.
Let's talk about the Packers beating the Chiefs. This one had an 86% post-game win expectancy for the Packers. The Packers are number 3 in offensive DVOA over the last 5 weeks, behind San Francisco and Dallas. And here's an even bigger surprise. The Chiefs are number 6 in offense over the last 5 weeks, despite all the problems and all the weirdness with the receivers and everything.
And some relatively low-scoring games and games where they pulled away at the end and didn't look good in the first half.
Yeah.
That is surprising. I know they're running the ball better. I think that's part of it.
This game, it was the defense. This was one of the 2 worst games for the Chiefs defense this year. The other one being when they let the Jets score 20 points on them. Because opponent adjustments and the Jets.
Yes.
I think I can't remember who I saw post this on Twitter, so I apologize. But it's time to stop saying that the Chiefs are going to get it.
Yeah.
This is the offense they've got.
Yep.
And it's good. It's a good offense. They're 4th in offensive DVOA right now.
Wow.
But it's not the Chiefs as we know them.
Right.
It's not going to be the Chiefs as we know them. They're not going to suddenly wake up and have the 49ers numbers. It's not going to happen. They're not Miami. This is what they are this year. And they can win it all. They can win it all if the defense doesn't play like it did last night. But their odds of winning it all are not the best. They should not be the favored team. And in fact, I mean, now I think they're still 2nd behind San Francisco, but I don't think they should be.
Right. And they're probably, when you go onto the market, obviously people are going to favor a team that has the playoff experience, defending Super Bowl champion. They still have Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of casuals out there, a lot of casual wagerers out there. But you're right. The thing with the AFC is, it's like, well, and I was talking about this on the radio. It's like, well, do you trust the Kansas City Chiefs receivers? And it's like, no, not really. It's like, do you trust the Miami Dolphins against a strong opponent? Like, not 100%, not really. Do you trust the Jaguars with their youth and their 3rd down woes and their 4th down woes? No, not really. You can do this for every AFC team.
Right. Do you trust Lamar Jackson to stay healthy?
Right, stay healthy, and for them to not 4th and 1, let's get fumble and go the other way, or like have their own pass dropping spree. You can't trust the Steelers and Browns to do anything right now. Don't trust the Bills, my God. So that's what the AFC is, and you kind of have to choose your poison when picking your favorite. But you're right. I think the Chiefs should be like 2nd or 3rd in that list, not at the top.
If you are watching us live, by the way, don't forget, we're here at 11 a.m. on Mondays and Thursdays. If you're on YouTube, you can make comments and ask questions. What did you think about the officiating? A lot of people in the analytics world now sort of take the position that you need to look at officiating like you look at fumble recovery.
Okay,
it's randomness. It's just an element of randomness that's added to the game, and you have to just accept it. And, people are going to talk about that unnecessary roughness on the hit on Mahomes where he was still in bounds, and that missed DPI on Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And we should all just accept now that they're never ever going to call a DPI on a Hail Mary, so don't even talk about it.
And that I think that should be codified personally.
Yeah. I mean, if that's the way they're going to call it, they might as well put that in the rules.
They should codify it, because if it was called, then every Hail Mary would succeed because you get the ball to 1 yard line on a free play. Watch the end of the Texans-Broncos game where the Broncos drive down into the goal line and Russell Wilson's trying to throw the ball into the end zone, and there's muggings everywhere, and they swallowed the whistles. Watch the end of the Jets against the Falcons, where Trevor Siemian is out there 13-8 on the final 2 drives. And I don't think there's any game plan at that point for the Jets except maybe we'll get some flags. Fart the ball into the general direction of a receiver, see if there's contact, etc. There's a problem right now where if the NFL actually called pass interference the way they're supposed to in the fourth quarters of these games, it would be more mayhem than what we're getting. Because there's a lot of game planning right now. And right down to, I think, the way Mahomes throws that ball, it's like, I'll heave this up there to Valdes-Scantling. Maybe we get the flag. That's almost what it looked like you're doing at that point.
Yeah.
And that's an issue. Now, in terms of analytics, what you're saying is one thing. I think there's also an overlay of, if you start looking at crews, you'll start seeing some of these trends.
Yes, that's definitely true. Certain crews do call certain things in different ways. There's no
and
question
Vegas knows it. And Vegas always knows it.
Vegas knows it, and teams should know it. They should research it and know when they can be a little bit more handsy because that crew calls it less.
Right. But that's something that most in the analytics community is like, who has the time, bandwidth, and capability to do that consistently weekly? Well, I mean, we don't, but I'm not sure anyone does.
What was your biggest surprise of the week?
My biggest surprise of the week was a little bit of a disappointment. Most of my surprises in life were disappointments. I was hoping to get a new quarterback bounce or a new coach bounce. And my little system really failed. Certainly did not get a new quarterback bounce from Bailey. Oh no. Got to melt. I did not get a Flacco bounce. And while I wasn't expecting some big Flacco bounce, didn't get that, and did not get a new coach bounce from the Panthers. And the Panthers were one that I thought I was going to get because the Panthers also had defenders coming back that were hurt, like Jeremy Chin, and I believe J.C. Horn came back or somebody else came back there. And that's the one where you get the new coach bounce against a bad opponent. 3 for 3 across the board. My quote unquote system got obliterated.
Yeah. My biggest surprise is the Steelers were my pick of the week and lost 24-10. And they lost in a weird way.
Are you sure that game's over?
Still postponed due to lightning. They had a higher success rate than the Cardinals on offense and more yards per play. But they kept getting to 3rd and short and then sucked. They just couldn't convert 3rd and shorts. And it was only their second bad game of the year on defense. And now Pickett is hurt.
Yes.
And yeah, as you noted, nobody wants to watch the Steelers play. Nobody wants to watch Mitch Trubisky versus Bailey Zappi on Thursday night, except to hear what Al Michaels is going to say about how horrible this game is.
The under is set at 31.5. 31.5. And I'm going to be making my mind up all week. First of all, I'm going to watch that fiasco. And live, I'll watch it the next morning, obviously. And then if I'm actually going to take that under.
Yeah. What was your I was right moment of the week?
This whole Aaron Rodgers thing for the last 2 months was like, oh, yeah, he's coming back. What does it mean? And Ian Rappaport cannot wait to throw cold water on it on Sunday morning. Like the Jets want so badly to have ice water thrown on this thing and just have it go away. And Rappaport starts with, well, really he might only come back in a emergency 3rd string capacity. Imagine Aaron Rodgers as your 3rd string.
Yeah, whatever, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. If they're eliminated from the playoffs, and like it was like almost this drive, like let's get the Jets eliminated so everyone can save face on this. And that's what they look like in this particular game against the Falcons, where there was no life to them whatsoever. They switched from Boyle to Simeon. I think they got some guys back on the offensive line. They should have at least put up a fight. Absolutely no fight in this team, and is now kind of happy. I'm waiting for the big announcement that Rodgers has decreed, you know what, they're simply not worthy of me in 2023. I'm just waiting for that announcement.
My I was right moment is the same game, and it's an I was right and I was wrong.
All right.
I was right that the Falcons' schedule would be so easy that they would be playoff contenders.
And they are, and it is.
I was wrong that they were going to be a mediocre team. They're a bad team. They are one of the 10 worst 6-6 teams in DVOA history.
Really?
Yeah, 24th on offense, 25th on defense, and 28th on special teams. It's all bad. But because of that schedule, they are 6-6 and the leaders to be the NFC South champions.
I have so many questions, and I shouldn't have questions about the Falcons because no one should care about the Falcons. But how are they that low in special teams when A, Younghoe Koo has kicked a bunch of field goals to win games, and B, they employ Cordarrelle Patterson?
Well, kickoff returns don't matter anymore.
And yeah, there are so few of them.
They're bad at punting.
Okay.
They're bad at punt returns. They're a little bit bad at kick returns because Cordarrelle just hasn't broken one yet.
Right. And he hasn't always been the kick returner because sometimes they put Bijan back there to return punts.
And Younghoe Koo is good.
And Younghoe Koo is good, but that's that.
That's one that's field goals. That's it. That's one category.
All right, let's stop talking about the Falcons. You're right though, and they're stunningly, and it's a tough watch every week.
Todd Singer says, I know this wasn't a high-profile game, but Colts Titans was highly entertaining. I laughed out loud several times at ridiculous plays. Reviewing the reverse post-game win expectancy games, here's one. The Titans were at 54% post-game win expectancy, but the Colts won the game with the 2 blocked punts, one of which is technically not a blocked punt because he never actually punted.
Yes.
But I'm counting it as a blocked punt. That's what I'm counting it as a blocked punt. It wasn't really an aborted punt.
In the stats, because
that basically a blocked punt. But
yeah, it was a blocked punt that simply was slightly different.
And then the 2-point, the Tennessee with a 2-point defensive conversion for the first time in a couple of years.
Yes. And Will Levis recovering his own fumble that looked like an interception, and then getting up and flexing and then running. That game was pandemonium. It was an LOL game, and it was entertaining, and it was fun to watch there. But yeah, post-game win expectancy. The Titans look good for big chunks of it. Special teams were a disaster. That had to be a disastrous special teams game for them because they also had a missed field goal. And they lost, and it was temporary injuries, and it doesn't matter because they're all but eliminated. They lost Henry to concussion protocol in that game. Jeffrey Simmons got knocked out of that game. So everything that could possibly go right for the Colts at some point goes right for the Colts, except for that 2-point conversion to help them get that win.
The other one, by the way, the Cowboys-Seahawks game on Thursday night was 50% each.
Talk about officiating.
It was a very close. Yeah, that one also had some interesting officiating in it.
Right. All right.
Did you have comments about the officiating in the Seahawks and Cowboys?
I couldn't stay awake for the fourth quarter. I had to watch it the next morning because it was so many flags that it just extended.
Went on and on, and yeah, we were all like, "What's the record for penalty yards in a game?"
Right. And that's not fun. That's not good football. That one, it looked like they were officiating it cleanly, but that's an example of, hey, if we call every holding, hey, if we call every defensive contact, you're there for 4.5 hours, folks.
All right, let's count up the DVOA top 10. Okay. Number 10, despite going down, is still Pittsburgh.
All right, whatever.
But, I mean, now they have Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. So their defense is still good, despite having a bad game. One bad game does not make the defense bad. Defense still good.
Yes.
Number 9, they went down a little bit, but they stay in the same place, is the Philadelphia Eagles.
Feels a little more accurate now, and that's what DVA is often telling you. It's telling you about games like Sunday.
Yeah. Number 8, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, we got a game tonight.
Who I believe will have the number 1 seed in the AFC if they win tonight.
Wow.
That's wild.
That is wild.
Number 7, the Detroit Lions.
All right. All right, wobbly win, but a win. They should have taken care of their business early in that game. They do have problems on defense.
Yeah, their defense has not played well the last few weeks. It's
right.
Trending bad.
You're letting the Saints come back on you, and it's one thing to have trouble with Olave, but it's like they're running the ball, they're running the Taysom cat and everything like that, and they're having success against you and coming back against you. That's a problem.
Number 6, dropping a spot on their bye week, is Buffalo.
Okay, nice to have a week off from Buffalo.
Number 5, the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow. Yeah, it did feel like you said it was a 50-50 win. Probably
it was a 50-50 post-game win expectancy game, but I think Dallas had a good DVOA. I think the post-game win expectancy was 50-50 because of penalties,
right?
In part, and because Seattle was a better pass. I guess both teams were pretty good passing. It was just 50-50. It was both teams were pretty good.
Okay, Seattle had those.
But I mean, that means that both teams, I think, had positive DVOA for the game. So
all right.
For Miami,
just sitting there. Just sitting there. Beating bad teams.
Beating the bad Washington defense. That's the worst defense in the league now. Denver finally climbed out of the last place slot in defense. Washington is now the worst defense.
Imagine when you trade all your pass rushers, fire your coordinator, and put a rookie safety on Tyreek Hill. Bad things happen.
Number 3, dropping a little bit, but staying in the same place, is Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then there is a gigantic gap. Like 17 percentage points.
Wow.
And then Baltimore.
Okay.
And then San Francisco.
That sounds right. And Baltimore is still speaking to us, a team that I think people sleep on a little bit, how good they are.
I mean, if you ask me subjectively to fiddle with these ratings, I would put Philly ahead of Detroit.
Yeah.
At this point with the Detroit defense. And I would put Baltimore more in between Kansas City and San Francisco.
Okay.
Especially with Mark Andrews hurt.
Yes.
But I feel strong. Baltimore is the second best team in the league right now.
And they get the Rams coming up next week. And then after that, you get the Jaguars. And that's an example of a game where you want to watch the line and watch the opportunities because there may be value there. If the Ravens go into that game healthy, I don't know if they're going to be favorites against the Jaguars, but that's a team that they should be able to beat.
Yeah. Speaking of the Jaguars, let's talk about Monday Night Football. It's the Bengals at the Jaguars. Jaguars -10. I will admit to not watching a lot of Jaguars this year, and I have no idea how the Jaguars have become the number 1 run defense by DVOA.
No idea.
Like who? What?
Yeah, that is stunning. Like, obviously it's the Browns.
Travon Walker was supposed to be maybe a better run defender than a pass defender. Okay, Foye Oluokun, good player. Yeah, sure, but Foye Oluokun's been there for a couple of years. Now all of a sudden they're number 1 against the run. Like, and I have a hard time believing that's going to stay.
And they're facing teams that run the ball well, like the 49ers.
Yeah,
which they lost to, obviously. But the Titans, that's one good thing they do well. They're facing good running teams. It's a gap shooting defense. I know you know they're going to be slanting. This is a very aggressive defense, but I'm stunned by that. That is shock. I would have guessed the Browns. I would have guessed 5 other teams afterwards before I guessed the
Tampa
Jaguars.
or something.
Yeah.
The Bengals rank 30th against tight ends, so I like Evan Engram over 41.5.
That's not a bad deal because he catches it. He catches it downfield, and he's a yak guy. So I like that.
The Jaguars' offense is not that good running this year. The Bengals' offense is not that good running this year.
No,
but I think in the end, it's Trevor Lawrence and Jake Browning, and the Bengals. The Jaguars are 5th in defense, and the Bengals are 27th.
Right. The Bengals were built to be complementary around the Burrow to Chase thing. And you take that away, and a defense that can help win games in other circumstances isn't equipped to always be on the field, always be playing from behind, etc.
I wouldn't want to bet this game, but if I did have to bet the spread, I would bet Jaguars -10.
Yeah, I would probably get -10. I don't love it.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I would probably, I don't have it in front of me. I would probably tease it around a little bit. Over under a 40. What's the system like? I would say over. I think part of it is that whole thing about how primetime games have all gone under this year. Mm-hmm.
But I think given the quality of the Bengals defense this year, I feel like it should go over the 40.
Yeah.
I probably would prefer betting that than betting the spread.
I'm worried about the Bengals not playing along and giving us 13 points to get that over. That's a little bit of a concern, but I'd probably parlay it in some way, and I'm not going to sit and fiddle with parlays live here, and maybe try and take the money line for the Jaguars and then mess around with the over-under a little bit to get odds that make it feel good.
All right. That does it for today's podcast. I hope everybody enjoys Monday Night Football tonight. Mike Tanier, as always, themessenger.com. I'm Aaron Schatz. Thank you for joining us on the FTN Network Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. Please rate and review the show and tell your friends about it, and be here on Thursday, again at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we will be previewing Week 14. Eagles. This is Eagles Cowboys, right?
Yep. Sunday night.
Yeah. Week 14, Eagles Cowboys, also Bills Chiefs. So, yeah, it's a good chance for the Chiefs to win one in the final seconds because it's the Bills.
Mamma mia, here we go again.
All right, that does it for today's show. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks, everyone who commented, and we will see you Thursday. So long.